Hello hooligans, today we are talking about Mean Girls 2. Nope. Today we are talking about Mean Girls 2024. I guess I'm still traumatized by the Mean Girls 2 video. It's the butt chin, isn't it? It always works. So I went into this movie genuinely thinking I would hate it. Because why are we remaking something so iconic and beloved by all? I mean, I guess besides the obvious money grabbing part. I expected there to be a lot of cringy TikTok humor and trying super hard to appeal to Gen Z. And while some of that is true, the movie actually manages to remain pretty universal while modernizing it for 2024. While I do think the original Mean Girls will forever be iconic, this movie is surprisingly a welcome addition to the world of Mean Girls. All I needed was for it to give me a reason to explain why this movie even exists along with the original. Because if it's going to be an exact carbon copy, I'm going to choose the original every time. And yes, it is the exact same plot in the sense that it follows Cady Heron, who has to take on the plastics led by Regina George, but there actually are enough differences that justify the existence of this movie and make me understand why someone might choose this movie over the original. I don't know if anyone would, but I'm just saying I would understand. Also, before we get in depth with our review, make sure you subscribe and leave a like, as that really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And with that said, let's continue with our review. So the most obvious difference of this movie compared to the original is that it's a musical and all of the songs are from the Broadway adaptation. While the songs didn't necessarily blow me away, I mean, I can't even tell you how one of them goes besides, "My name is Regina George." They all felt warranted because they were used in a way that actually carried the plot forward. They never felt like interruptions. Additionally, the music actually created some humor that would not have existed in the original version. So for example, when Cady was singing about her crush and she goes into this fantasy world in her head, in reality, everybody is looking at her weird. And that's another thing I liked about the music, was that they made sure when they went into these big fantastical musical numbers that it was actually removed from reality. It's not like in Glee whenever they go into these huge productions that it was actually in real life. It also really helps that the whole cast can sing very well. I mean, Renee Rapp literally played Regina already on Broadway, and Ali'i Cravalho literally played Moana, and every time Damian and Janice sang together, it always sounded very nice. That's the extent of my musical vernacular. Another thing that I found very interesting was that whenever Regina was singing, they would change the aspect ratio so that it looked more cinematic. And I think it worked really well because it gave Regina this more menacing presence on screen, and it made it feel like all eyes are on her, which was the point. Now let's talk about some other positive differences from the original. I think for the most part, all of the actors did a really good job owning their interpretations of these characters. It makes it a little bit harder to say, oh, Lindsay Lohan did better or Rachel McAdams did better, because their interpretations are just a little bit different. And as I said, for the most part, those were positive differences. Let's start with Angourie Rice as Cady or Cady. I think the actress looks a lot more innocent and a little bit nerdy, especially compared to Lindsay Lohan. And so when she transforms into a mean girl, like, we could tell that she was trying to be someone that she's not. And it actually made me be like, ooh, yeah, maybe I like the version of you beforehand. While for Lindsay Lohan, when she transformed into a plastic, I was like, you know what? I see this. This suits your vibe very well. And speaking of plastics, let's talk about the plastics. I mean, just two words: Renee Rapp. She was such a powerhouse. I mean, she carried every scene that she was in. And she really played a mean girl. Like, some of the stuff she said was just straight up aggressive. Rachel McAdams' version of Regina George was kind of passive aggressive, right? She would say things like, "Oh, you're so brave for wearing whatever." While Renee's version, she was just straight up like,
"You look like hot garbage."
In fact, she was so mean that it was kind of unbelievable for her to change sides at the end and be nice to Cady, even if she was saying that she was under the influence of painkillers. Also, I know the internet was kind of making fun of the way the plastics dressed in this movie, saying things like, oh, it's giving Shein, it's giving Zara. But I honestly didn't mind because Regina was just so confident in herself that I believe she would wear things like that because she would just set the trend even if she she just didn't care what she wore. Also, I don't know, is that how girls dress in 2024 now? If you are watching this and you are a teenage girl, let me know in the comments. Another change in this version is that both the other two plastics, Gretchen played by BB Wood and Karen played by Avantika, actually got their own songs, which means they got a lot more screen time. I think I do still prefer the original version of Gretchen. I mean, hello, I dressed up as her for Halloween one year. But Avantika as Karen had me dead. I mean, she is stupidly hot, respectfully, and literally. Just the way she acts with her face was funny. She was like... Her version of Karen is definitely different from Amanda Seyfried's, but I'm very, very happy that we now have both versions to watch. Okay, now let's talk about Janice and Damian. It was really weird to hear the voice of a Disney princess in the body of a punk goth character, but I do think Ali'i played Janice very well. I do have to say though, I think the original Janice had just a little bit more character to her. Like, we got to see more time with Janice becoming friends with Cady, and so it felt a little more devastating when Cady betrayed her. Also, we skipped the whole storyline where Janice was working at the mall. So overall, it felt like Janice got less screen time. Another reason that Janice wasn't as good in this movie was that she was completely overshadowed by Damian. I mean, he stole the show every scene. He was so funny and is 100%, no, 1000% an improvement from the original Damian. He also just reminds me of so many people I know in real life, and he just feels so grounded and realistic. I just think it's perfect casting. All right, let's talk about Aaron Samuels, played by Christopher Briney. So you know that scene where Cady goes to math class and she meets Aaron for the first time and then Aaron turns his head? Yeah, that part. You know what that was reminding me of? I mean, no hate to the actor or anything, but he was definitely the worst part of the movie. He almost had nothing to do and barely any lines. Also, he didn't even sing. The original Aaron was played by Jonathan Bennett, and he just had so much more charisma to him on screen. And in the original, you actually wanted Cady to get with Aaron. But in this version, every time he was on screen, it was just kind of a bore. Anyways, no hate to the actor, you did great. And a couple of other quick shoutouts, including Tim Meadows, Tina Fey, Ashley Park, Mahi Alam, and John Hamm. They all had brief appearances, but they were all able to deliver pretty funny moments, so shout out to them. Now, because this movie takes place in 2024, you know Hollywood just had to throw in some TikTok references. Usually I hate it when Hollywood tries to show that, oh, they know what's hip with Gen Z. It almost feels like when your mom goes, oh, no cap, or your dad goes, yeah, that's bussin', man. Like, it's just cringy, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like when Hollywood does that. It reminds me of that scene in Black Panther when they go, what are those? And that joke was just so dated. What are those? I feel like if you're not Gen Z, you're just not gonna understand the humor. And the thing about Gen Z humor, right, it's very ephemeral. That word makes it sound more intellectual than it is. What it really is that it's just degenerate. You know, lingo changes from week to week. Memes get old after 24 hours. Anyway, back to my original point. They did show some TikToks in this movie, including some influencer cameos, I guess, but I'm really glad they didn't overuse it. For the most part, I can say that the TikToks kind of felt like an organic way of how social circles might work within teenagers in 2024. But I do think how current the movie was trying to be might make it less rewatchable in the future. Like, the thing about the original one is that it was the reference. It became a part of the culture with millennials and older Gen Z. But with this movie, it kind of felt like it was trying to reference Gen Z instead of trying to become a part of it, if that makes sense. The technology also contributed to a plot change, but basically there's a moment where a clip goes viral on TikTok, but that changes the plot from the original. It felt kind of weird in the moment when I saw it, but it didn't really impact the story overall. It kept things pushing. And there were also other minor changes throughout the movie, but they were all pretty insignificant. Although I will say the parts that they did change or chose not to include, the original did better. So maybe it was goes to this movie's detriment for them changing those parts. But hey, in a funny way, it kind of makes me want to revisit the original, so I guess that's a win. So overall, while this remake will never be as iconic as the original, it was as good as it was going to be for a 2024 musical adaptation of Mean Girls. And it has enough differences that gives me a reason to want to watch both versions. Overall, my rating for this movie is a 6.5 out of 10. Did y'all like this version, or did you think it was a piece of flaming garbage? Either way, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and also make sure you check out my reaction video to the entire Mean Girls 2 movie. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe and leave a like. I'll appreciate you very, very much. And that's it for me. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.